Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first item on the agenda is the minutes of this committee's meeting held November 30th. The recommendations to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second. Any errors or omissions in the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item, please.
Next item is delegation. I'd like to invite Mr. David Taylor and Mr. Gerald Solberg from Cascade Renewable Carbon Corporation. They're coming to speak on organic waste processing, and there's a brief slide presentation for that. I'd like to invite them forward at this time.
Good evening.
This is neutral. This is just neutral. Yeah, this is
I
just want to make sure this thing works properly. Thank you for inviting us to have a chat with you. I'm the president of Cascade Renewable Carbon Corp. We're a BC private company. I have three objectives in mind today. One is to tell you very briefly about our company. Two, to tell you about our technology. And three, what that could possibly mean to Coquitlam. Now, they tell me if I push this, we're a BC private company. We are involved in wastewater treatment technology. It's a small size operation in terms of municipal sewage, probably not applicable to Coquitlam, but for ski resorts, golf courses. We're in that business. We're also in the waste handling, equipment business, and we do engineering and design. Important thing from our perspective is that our business model is a design, build, own, and operate model, which we desire to own composting systems or biorecycling systems. However, because we have the technology, we are prepared to design and build and possibly operate for other independent clients. We can structure our business model in any number of ways. We could enter into a P3 with municipality or government agencies. We could enter into a joint venture. We could own a facility and operate it on behalf of a community, and we can contract the design and build of a facility for a community. We have representations across the country, and I put on this slide just a couple little items regarding a conference in February that's really important to us, but I think it's important possibly to Coquitlam also. The Federation of Canadian Mayors municipalities are having a conference in February, and it's a sustainable environmental conference. The key thing is the potential of accessing the Green Municipal Fund, and from our perspective, not necessarily from yours, Quebec's recent announcement of a $650 million fund for the disposal and recovery of organic residuals. This is a huge thing. It's the biggest in North America. That's a little brief comment about our company. In-vessel composting is what we are promoting. Some of you may have heard that we are, in fact, proceeding with a plant in Maple Ridge, which is 30,000 tons a year. It is in-vessel composting. In-vessel composting in today's world is the state of the art. Historic, traditional methods of composting in most jurisdictions that have examined this issue will no longer be allowed. California has passed a rule called 1133 where you have to use in-vessel composting. You can't use windrows, you can't use traditional methods of composting. It's a proven technology. It meets all of the EPA standards which most jurisdictions in Canada have adopted. It's very cost effective. I'm sure some of you are aware that when Metro was discussing having a composting operation for Metro, they were talking in terms of $20 million for 40,000 tons. We can build a plant. We could build a plant for Coquitlam, for example, less than $8 million. The operating costs are less than $24 a ton, and I think some of you will know that you're going to be paying over $50 a ton and more to Metro to get rid of your green waste and food waste. One thing that has become clarified and quantified just very recently is the fact that there is now a method of calculating greenhouse gas credits for material that are diverted from landfills. The last item on that slide is very important. On a project like Maple Ridge, 30,000 tons, and by the way, we're relying there on industrial, commercial, and institutional waste. We're not relying on residential waste. That's a revenue line of over $150,000 a year. Now, in vessel composting, we put material in a container, it's sealed. We control the temperature, we control the airflow through it for a prescribed period of time. We meet every conceivable standard there is. If you look in the upper left-hand corner, you see traditional composting. That pool of water has come out of the compost and is potentially a contaminant for groundwater. We have no discharge of water. Systems like the top, which is a plastic cover, there is no controlled engineering environment. Our system is replicable day in and day out, produces a consistent product, and we can predict the results that are coming out of that. What is interesting, and I looked at, I believe this city of Coquitlam's population is about 125,000 people right now. You probably produce somewhere between 10 and 15,000 tons. That's a relatively small plant in our context. But if that plant could be put on a site where you might have a transfer station, where you're covering a lot of the infrastructure already, like front-end loader, wood scales, and so on, we could build a small plant. We couldn't build a small plant on a standalone basis. But if it was combined with a 15,000 ton a year plant, 50 tons a day, or 10,000 ton plant at 30 tons a day is workable. Now, if you expanded the idea to the Tri-Cities, you now have about 200,000 people, and it becomes more and more economical. It could become a standalone plant servicing more than one community in the Northeast sector. The key thing here, compared to traditional methods of composting, we have a rapid process time. Material is on the site and off the site within 35 days. A traditional composting system, which is such as we have now in Vancouver, is probably 75 days. We require 2/3 the land requirement. That's because we're using a very aggressive active digestion system in containers at the very front end of this process. These are more or less what the containers look like. The middle picture is a very good one. That's a recent picture. These are based on the same thing you see as shipping containers, but they're modified, the floors and everything else to give adequate air movement through it, temperature control, and so on. The reason for the shipping containers is because using that chassis, we have a very economical equipment base to operate from. So, why Coquitlam? Well, first off, I think it's probably the best logistics location in Metro Vancouver. You could easily serve yourself, particularly if you could tie it into some other infrastructure. Everybody knows that we're dealing with diversion of bioorganics. Coquitlam wants to be part of that, I'm sure. It's a solution. So, it's the best available commercial technology. I can assure you that it's the minimal capital cost requirement for the composting technology. It will meet every requirement you have from social acceptance, community standards. It is odor-free, and there are no emissions or leachate that have to be taken off the site. It will reduce carbon footprint. It, of course, will provide some employment. We expect that typically a plant would have, standalone plant would have 10 to 11 employees. Of course, if you were combining it with something else, the infrastructure, you'd have fewer people. That basically is a story we wanted to tell you in what was, I was told, 7 minutes. I hope I'm not far off that.
Oh, we weren't timing you for this. We thought this was important that we'd let you get through your presentation any time you needed today. So, well, this could be a long story. I've been known to stand up for 4 hours. But basically, we're a local company. We have the license for Canada of a very, very good technology. We're bringing the first plant to Canada. Why would we think in terms of a second plant in Coquitlam? Well, we're thinking of a second plant also in Surrey, or a third plant in Surrey. The reality is the total load as far as bioorganics and Metro is concerned, we don't really care what Metro does. Metro can go ahead and set up any residential program they want. Our objective is to bring a technology here, initially as private enterprise servicing what they call the ICI market. But we recognize that the technology has many other applications, and we're quite prepared to build plants on behalf of other people who want to own them. Maybe they want to operate them, maybe they want us to operate them. But we can do that. And that's the message. We have a core business model, but we're prepared to work with and build plants for other people. Okay. I have a question. Mayor Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming, and I really appreciate your presentation. I have a couple of questions. Council's goal here, obviously, is to be both fiscally and environmentally responsible. And the environmental side is how do we divert some solid waste from the waste stream into other uses. And this one would accomplish that. I wonder about the cost of the, you had identified some per tonnage costs. How does that arrived at, and how secure are those kinds of costs?
There's a lot of operating experience already. Yep. There are plants operating in New Mexico, Minnesota, Washington State. We have a pretty good profile on costs. In terms of the capital costs, when we were a proponent of the Metro request last fall for a 40,000-ton plant. We don't know, well, we're not sure what was going on at Metro, and we never offered to build a plant on behalf of Metro. We offered to build a plant, pay for the plant, at no cost to Metro, and all we wanted was a 10-year contract, what they call a put-and-pay contract. As we went through the process of trying to understand why Metro made the decision they did, they gave us some indications of the capital costs that they were looking at. we know what our costs are. And we know we could build a plant for less than $8 million and turn it over to them. And various people in Metro, right at the very top, were still talking in terms of a $20 million capital cost. It was complete nonsense. Now, if you need three times the amount of land, that could be a factor. But we know we can build a plant and deliver it for those that kind of money. Now, the operating costs are they're well established with our system. It's relatively inexpensive. I didn't come here presuming that Coquitlam was going to build a plant to supplant what Metro was thinking of doing. But I guess the question you could ask is Metro going to serve Coquitlam properly or well? I do know from talking to other municipalities that there's a nervousness about the fact of putting their organics and their green waste in Metro's hands in terms of costs going forward. Sorry. I won't presume to make a judgment on that. But I do know that you can control your own destiny in terms of those areas of the waste stream at relatively low cost, and considerably lower costs than tipping fees going to Metro. I'm not here to judge that, but I do know I do know for a fact that we could put those numbers down in a contract.
Okay, and you mentioned the particular products. Which organics?
Pardon me?
Which organics are you?
Which organics?
Can you outline? Obviously, you're talking about garden waste, but and elements of kitchen waste.
We would typically here look at food waste and green waste, yard waste, and so on. However, the reality is the system can be used for animal waste, it can be used for poultry waste, it can be used for biosolids at a wastewater treatment plant. The same concept and philosophy works. It just requires fine-tuning of different issues. I'm not sure, I guess I don't know the question to ask as to whether that's an issue in Coquitlam or not, or even the Tri-Cities. I do know that out in Abbotsford, their big problem is poultry waste. And we can actually fine-tune the technology to deal only with poultry waste. But here, it's primarily food waste and green waste.
But obviously lots of range of opportunity, lots of range of different wastes that you could treat. Okay. Well, that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. So you mentioned that you're mainly doing commercial right now.
Yes.
Okay, so it is capable of doing all the rest, providing we had a separate collection. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I'm getting an echo here.
You're only doing commercial waste right now.
It's our intention, the concept behind the Maple Ridge plant
Yes.
Initially was industrial, commercial, institutional waste. Now, we have told Maple Ridge that we would be prepared and we have no problem with it, of taking in some residential waste.
Why are you hesitant on residential waste?
Well,
actually, if you can pull the mic, because we're on.
As a business model, when we started this project, we saw no defined collection system for residential waste at the time. We don't see it even now. I think we're still, personally, I think we're still a ways away from that. Absolutely, without question, we would take residential waste if it's available. And we're not responsible for the logistics before it gets to the gate of our plant. But in terms of taking the waste and processing it, that's no problem.
Okay, when you mention poultry waste and and animal waste and things like that, and the biosolids, is that going to change the air quality at all?
No. If we were dealing with animal waste, we would deal with it in a very specific situation. Well, all I was trying to say was that the technology of in-vessel composting can deal with all of those various types of organic waste. We actually do not want to deal with animal waste as far as any plant in Metro is concerned. There are places, and in Alberta people are talking about pure animal waste as a feedstock. We can deal with all kinds of feedstocks, but the answer in Metro area and Coquitlam, Surrey, etc., is predominantly food waste and predominantly green waste.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Sekora.
We're not going to mix the two, by the way. We're not going to mix animal waste, biosolids, and food waste. That doesn't fly.
Okay.
How about, okay.
Councillor Sekora.
Thank you very much. Okay, how about mushroom waste? There's a lot of mushroom farms in the valley that you see great big stocks of product on the field. Could you handle that?
Can you do that again?
Mushroom waste.
Oh, no. I thought that's what you were talking about. No.
No.
That's a very, very specific technology.
Yeah, and do you have a market for your soil that you would produce, say, 21 days later, 35 days later?
Do we have a market?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Our product will be packaged. Now, if we were doing a plant for Coquitlam, I mean, that would be, first off, it could be your choice what you want to do with it, and you could use it yourself in the community, or we could maybe operate the plant and we could get rid of it on a revenue sharing basis. But from our plant that we would own, we have a deal to sell all of the material we can produce, and we're going to sell it in package form to the big box retailers. There is a ready market for doing this. This is a very high-end quality product. It's what we call a Class A compost. It's at the top end of the soil enhancement business. And if we get a very consistent feedstock day in and day out, we'll make something which is virtually called a biofertilizer. And there's a ready demand in a greenhouse landscaping business, but the big box retailers, that's the market.
Okay, now on this product, say this product delivered to your plant, it's loaded into your, let's say, first container, or 1 or 2 containers, and then do those containers open during the time that you're getting this product ready to be topsoil, or are they kept closed all the time?
No, these containers are completely sealed at all times. When the material comes in, we mix it with wood chips and we grind it so that it's a very homogeneous mass of material. We then put it in the containers, the ones you saw, for 15 days. Why 15 days? That happens to be an EPA regulation in the US, which most places in Canada have adopted. And we have to maintain the temperature for the first 3 days over 65 degrees centigrade, and for the balance, or for a total of, combined with that, a total of 15 days over 55 degrees. It's called pathogen reduction. So the material's in the containers for 15 days, and it's quite warm. We take it out of the containers and we take it into an enclosed building, and it sits for another 15 days. During that period of time, the material cools down. We may add more water to it. When I said that we don't have leachate like you saw in that picture, we're actually a net importer of water. We need to keep our material more moist all the way through the whole process. It's interesting. This technology, you take 1 ton of waste material in, and you get 1/2 ton of finished product. And the difference is basically water. It's evaporated, and we scrub the evaporation so that there is no odor and there are no emissions that are harmful.
Also in your deal here, I looked briefly that you had other cities across Canada looking for this type of operation. Could you tell us the provinces or the cities that you may have connections with or have been asking you for the same facility? Yeah, if you can say it openly, or is it?
Yeah. What answer are you looking for?
Well, which provinces have been asking you for this type of operation?
Everyone.
Right across Canada?
Everyone.
Okay.
Every province and every major community is going through the same problem: diversion of solid waste. We got the city of Laval, the city of Gatineau in Quebec, there's the community north of Toronto, there's Winnipeg, there's Strathcona outside of Edmonton, there's Surrey, there's Abbotsford.
Yeah.
You can go right across the country, though. I mean, everybody has the same problem.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Mr. Solberg, I would thank you very much for your presentation to council, and I think our staff will evaluate your proposal and give council their input into that. But once again, thank you very much for your presentation. Mr. Gilbert.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Sekora.
Yeah, thank you. This is, as of last Monday when I got put on this committee to study the waste.
Well, no, that doesn't start till next week.
Pardon?
The committee changes do not start until
No,
January.
no, I've already started. Sorry. I got appointed last Monday.
No, through to Mr. Gilbert. Mr. Gilbert.
I believe Councillor Sekora is talking about the standing committee that, not this standing committee, but a standing committee that is responsible for investigating regional solid waste
and
issues.
I'm the only member on it.
Okay, yeah. I thought you were talking about this
now,
committee.
this is
okay, so you're
we brought these gentlemen here today because I heard about them, and certainly this is one of the pillars of about 4 pillars that I'm going to bring forward as a report in January to all the council members to either accept or reject.
Okay. Okay. Is this your interim report that's next on the list, Councillor Sekora, or is that still coming? Or have you just done?
No, this is just the one that of many things that have to do. See, first of all, you've also.
I'm just trying to clarify, Councillor Sekora. We had the proposal, then we had you down here as the next delegation to speak on an interim update on the strategy.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying, and there's also this afternoon that I'll be mentioning things in our closed door meeting that I can't mention here today.
Okay.
Okay, an open meeting.
I have a question.
Mention them.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you. On the item we're on now, does anybody here know, Mr. Susak, where POCO's putting their garden waste now? Or household waste, I should say.
Sure. I'll ask Mr. Zaborniak to confirm. He's here. He is the manager for the solid waste. POCO has.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
I'll ask Mr. Zaborniak to comment.
Yeah, through the chair. They're bringing it to the Augustine Yard, close to the Pitt River Bridge, the same transfer location that we bring it to, and then from there it gets loaded. So our garbage trucks with the green waste drop the green waste at that site, and then it gets transferred from there to Richmond, to Fraser Mills Soil and Fiber in Richmond.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, thank you. And one more question, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Is there anybody else doing garden waste? I understand POCO was sort of jumping out ahead of the pack to see what's happening with household and kitchen waste. Is there anybody else there isn't in BC doing it? Do you know?
Through the chair. Yes, I think they're the only ones, at least in the Lower Mainland. We are doing
the Lower Mainland they are, but anywhere outside in BC, is there any plant such as this anywhere else?
Bridget tells me potentially Nanaimo,
Okay.
We are doing, Coquitlam and also Delta are doing a trial project.
Yes.
So we are doing some in one of our neighborhoods that includes both the garden waste and the yard waste as a
Right.
mix.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
You're done? Okay. Mr. Gilbert?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 3 is a second delegation from Councillor Sekora. It concerns interim update on the strategy for regional solid waste solutions.
I've already mentioned the fact that there's many things I want to talk about. This is one of the pillars that is out about 4 different pillars, but the other 2 or 3 involves other things that I can't even mention in an open meeting. It has to go into a closed door meeting, so I'll be talking about it this afternoon in the closed door meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Sekora. Next item, please.
I have no idea.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item, item 4, concerns the minutes of the Coquitlam River Aggregate Advisory Committee meeting held Wednesday, November 18th. Recommendation is to receive those minutes.